tram as something that does what a light rail does and yet costs the same as a bus.
Have proposed light rail systems that either get greatly reduced or don't happen at all because of the expense of putting rail in the roadbed. It's highly disruptive to the business community, for residents.
Do you frequently become dissatisfied with the status of American public transportation? Or perhaps you're from another nation and you've heard about the transport problems in the United States. You come to the right place if you're wondering why America lacks reliable public transit. Since there aren't enough options for public transportation, commuters in the US are forced to rely on their cars, which deteriorates the air quality, causes traffic, and increases greenhouse gas emissions. So why do we not have a more effective public transport? The cause includes years of planning mostly on cars, laws, poor design, cost-cutting, and unfavorable public perception. Furthermore, the American public transport system simply cannot meet the needs of the average American while still keeping up with those of other countries. Is it a matter of finance? Or is there more going on than it first appears? You should have watched to learn more about the United States' challenges in developing high-quality public transportation. 75% of Americans travel by car, alone, or in a carpool, according to studies. Additionally, Americans spend more time commuting and money on cars and insurance as cities expand and rents rise. In a 2021 study, Texas A&M found that the congestion cost in our 15 major cities is nearly $7 billion. Over the last 65 years, the US has spent close to $10 trillion in taxpayer money on roads and highways. Only 25% of that, though, went towards using public transportation. In March of 2022, the Minnesota legislature asked the auditor to examine the Southwest Corridor light rail project. The Federal Transportation Administration initially gave the transportation project its nod in September of 2011, when it was initially projected to cost $1.25 billion to build. Even though the project's initial financial outlay was high, long-term economic benefits for the city and its environs are appealing. On the new 23-kilometer route, 56,000 residents live within a 10-minute walking distance. And after it's finished, 16 new stations and 2 new tunnels will link them to 81,000 jobs along the extension and 145,000 employment in downtown Minneapolis. Minnesota now has a modest yet effective metro system. Moreover, the Southwest Corridor is expected to considerably increase the city's metropolitan area's capacity for public transportation. However, the project is currently 9 years behind schedule, which is unfortunate for the local community. The auditor estimates the cost overruns are to blame for the project's overall expense, more than doubling to $2.74 billion. While part of those additional expenses are being paid for by the federal, state, and municipal governments, there is still a financial gap of about $535 million. And do you know that the Southwest Corridor project is notable for not being particularly notable? Sounds a bit redundant, but major transit construction projects are widespread in the US. However, they are frequently plagued by delays, worsening the urgent need for investment in the sector given the rising traffic in most US cities. According to the Texas A&M Transportation Institute, the congestion cost in the US 15 major cities was nearly $7 billion in 2019. Despite being the richest nation on Earth, the US does not have the best urban transit networks, and every year, the American Society of Civil Engineers released a report card on the condition of the transportation system in the US. According to the ASCE, 45% of Americans lack access to public transportation, and the majority of current networks are outdated and in poor condition. Moreover, a $176 billion backlog of investment is expected to reach $270 billion by 2029. How did the US come to have such a poor transit system, and why is it so difficult to implement the investment properties required to upgrade them? Will the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill passed by the US Congress fix these issues? Both our community and environment benefit from public transport. Particularly when we utilize electric solutions, it lowers fossil fuel consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. Additionally, it can lessen traffic, noise, and air pollution. Public transportation allows people of various ages and socioeconomic levels to access jobs, education, and cultural opportunities. According to studies, having access to public transit also helps kids' social and emotional development, lightens the loads on parents, and lessens loneliness among older people. And finally, by generating jobs, public transport can have a significant positive economic impact. So, what went wrong? Did the policies put forward by the government hit them back? Well, let's see. Rich urbanites moved to multi-family mixed-use buildings in cities like Denver, Des Moines, Los Angeles, and Boston from 1890 to 1930, and the streetcar suburbs grew in popularity. A streetcar station that would carry residents into the closest urban center was within a 5 to 10 minute walk of the majority of the dwellings in the community. Some argue that the terrain of the United States renders public transportation unworkable. However, in reality, individuals are forced to drive due to how our environment has been designed. After World War II, the suburbs we know today were created due to the vehicle culture and the greater emphasis on single-family dwellings. For instance, suburban highways curving layouts were designed to reduce traffic. In the meantime, streetcar firms went out of business due to little help from the government. Our urban regions are still expanding, hence unchecked growth into uninhabited space comes at the price of current facilities and infrastructure expenditures. As a result, people must travel even further distances, making establishing links for public transportation more challenging. For instance, according to Brookings, the population of the Chicago area expanded by only 4% between 1970 and 1990, but the region's built-up land climbed by 46%. Hence, many locals are consequently put in a precarious situation. Without a car, it's impossible to get to work, and without work, it's impossible to pay for a car. The situation is due to the rise in suburban poverty across the country. Moreover, car ownership costs are at a significant hardship for the working poor. Do you know that more than 43,000 individuals work in the $79 billion public transport sector, and the public transport investments yield $5 on every dollar invested? Some people use low ridership as an excuse to avoid investing in public transport. And do you think that paying road taxes in the United States is worth a try? Even if 3/4 of the population properly paid road taxes, are they benefiting? Share your thoughts in the comments. People won't use transport if it doesn't make sense. One typical trip, which would take 20 minutes by vehicle and 60 minutes by public transport, is highlighted by the Brookings report in Chicago. According to Bloomberg, this subpar design is frequently accompanied by unpredictable service brought on by lack of upkeep. Quote, "When the transit service that cities provide is not attractive, the demand from passengers that might justify its improvement will never materialize." They continue to add, "In many cases, transit providers continue to lose customers and money by reducing essential services to save money. Public transport is considered a necessary utility in many parts of the world. Although it is typically treated as a social assistance in the US, it is further supported by the observation that those who have no other option frequently take public transport that is in poor condition. These systems promote division since the general public doesn't find them useful. Budget for public transport are generally decided by local governments and stated rather than the federal government, and spending per capita varies greatly between states. The Urban Institute claims that current funding for transit operations is biased towards wealthier and more liberal communities. Hence, other low-income communities are thus left without access to reliable and economical transport. So what can we do to make the situation better? Do you have any ideas? We must make public transportation more convenient, affordable, and comfortable to increase ridership. Hence, experts advise using buses that are electric. Moreover, compared to more complicated infrastructure projects like subways, electric buses are less expensive and simpler to buy and install. However, designing with consideration and following best practices is essential. These include knowing commuter preferences, combining bus routes with affordable housing, and lowering the number of delivery vehicles on the road. Moreover, the usage of cars should be discouraged as well. The Brookings Institution said, enacting congestion and vehicle miles travel fees, increasing the cost of parking, etc., and then reinvesting these revenues in a human-scale transportation infrastructure. Politically, the Urban Institute urges the federal government to play a bigger part in managing public transport to assure its availability as a public utility. Depoliticizing the topic and gaining public support can be accomplished largely by forming local coalitions and highlighting the advantages of public transportation for communities. Thank you for taking this journey with us today. We hope you found it as fascinating as we did. And do you agree with our findings? Or maybe you have personal experiences or insights you'd like to share? We'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, if you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, so you won't miss out on our upcoming deep dives. Until next time, keep exploring and keep the conversation going in the comments below.